And now it's time for another special feature.
Tickle.
What's the fun time, bitch?
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to Botched Roll, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, your dungeon master, your storyteller, your idiot who probably will fire in the combat. That's right, guys. So we are back here on the show. I've been recording a couple of these over the past couple of days, and this is actually take number 4 on this particular topic, only because I wanted to protect the identities of people, but I've also had a chance to reflect upon it and get some feedback from some people who heard the early drafts of those previous episodes. But before we start today, I just want to mention I'm going to be launching my new Dungeon Master for Hire service in just a couple of weeks as of this recording on June 22nd or whenever Free RPG Day is. So to be sure to be checking out your local game stores and get some really cool shit from people like Wizards, Paizo, Renegade Game Studios, Free League Publishing. Like, seriously, go to freerpgday.com. I'll make sure Alex puts an episode, or I'll put a link in the episode description. And yeah, we can do that. And like I said, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you, and just playing some fantastic games like I did on Terrible Warriors. So if you've ever wanted to have the Power Rangers fight Megatron, or if you want to explore the depths of the Enterprise NX and maybe there's a Xenomorph on board, who knows? Maybe we can do that while flying the flag of House Kurita against the clans. So let us talk about this evening's topic. And I don't know how long this one's going to go, simply because, like I said, I'm not going to describe the situation that prompted this, and I'm going to talk a lot in vagaries, but it's going to come down to, this is conflict resolution, and I'm basing this upon a couple of different things. So, in my professional life, I am an activist, I'm an advocate, and I deal a lot with conflict resolution in very tense and hot circumstances, be it from an Indigenous point of view, a disability point of view, or just plain dealing with people who are jerks. So recently I had a situation happen in one aspect of my personal life where it involved some people not getting along. And that's all I'm really going to say about that. And it got me thinking about, how do you resolve problem conflict when it comes to dealing with toxic players and toxic game masters, because both do exist. You can be a fantastic player, but be in a really toxic game, and you can be a really fantastic DM and have toxic players that are affecting your enjoyment of wanting to prepare this adventure for them, because it might be mentally draining. And it basically comes down to, how do you deal with this, right? Because I'm going to presume most of you that are listening out there are adults, or, reasonably well behaved, I'll say. And a lot of this just comes down to communication. And I know that is the dumbest and most broad answer I could possibly give you, but stay with me. So, I'm going to address this as a player first and then as a DM. So as a player, let's say you're in a situation in a game and you're not having a good time, be it with someone else at the table, maybe it's your DM, whatever the situation might be. I think the most important thing is to acknowledge your feelings, like, okay, I don't like this. This sucks. What can I do? But the most important thing, I think, is to not lash out emotionally. Like, you can't literally go to war on said person or persons, because then everybody's feelings get hurt and then nothing gets resolved. And you've literally accomplished nothing by, giving in to your Goku Super Saiyan rage. But your feelings are valid and you should pay attention to those. So if you're able to remove yourself from the situation and approach it from a place of calm, I think a lot of it just is being comfortable in that space of vulnerability to approach someone. And I know this is a big ask of people because I know some people have social anxiety. So you could even do this via email. You could even do this via letter. But I think the important thing is to remain as poised as possible. Remain composed. So you might say to, I don't know, let's call the dungeon master Terry. You are the player in this case. So you could be like, Dear Terry, hi, I'm not having a good time right now with what's happening in the story. I feel like it might be bringing up some stuff that I'm not prepared to deal with. Or I think maybe in what I'm perceiving is I feel like I'm being picked on, for example. And one big piece of advice I can always give is if you're a game master, don't you ever let this get fucking personal. Because you're not there to punish your friends. You're there to have a good time. But again, I'll talk about that a little bit later. So it's more or less just being able to calmly communicate what's going on. You might say, hey, I don't like the themes you're dealing with. I don't like the encounters feel like they're maybe a little too lopsided. Maybe you're favoring one player over another. And that's a thing that could happen with group dynamics. Like it could be a boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever, best friend. It could be kind of cliquey. And honestly, you're just going to have to use a lot of best judgment how to kind of deal with that. It's going to be a lot of learning how to read people. And you would be surprised how much this whole thing has actually helped me in my professional life. Like, for example, I was dealing with a meeting. I guess this would have been getting over a year ago and change. We had a very tense moment at a service meeting I was at, and someone was quoting directly from a police report, and they said something very racially insensitive, and that room lit up real fast. And fortunately, I was able to talk to everybody, all the parties involved, say, all right, guys, like, look, let's take a breath. Let's take a heartbeat here. And you didn't mean anything harmful by it. Your feelings are valid. Let's work through this and let's talk this out because we're all here together to get the good work done. And you can kind of apply the same thing for your role-playing game experience. Like, hey, we're all here to have fun. We're all here to make memories because conversation doesn't need to lead to confrontation, but it sometimes does. And confrontation is not always a bad thing. It's just how aggressive you take that confrontation. Like I say, if you go in with pitchforks and knives and that's your go-to, again, maybe it's valid. But at the same time, if you stab the guy, you're not going to get the resolution that you want because now they're dead. So I know that's a very extreme example, but what I'm saying is if you go in guns blazing, you're probably not going to get what you want. But if you're willing to take that step back to remove yourself from the emotional part of that, even if your feelings have been hurt, you might be able to find a common ground with the DM or the other players. And like I said, like if these are people that you're hanging out with, you're choosing to spend time with, if they're your friends, they'll understand. And if you're any sort of a game master, you'll listen to them because you want to engage your players. You want to help create these wonderful worlds of fantasy, be it Shadowrun, Transformers, Star Trek, Battletech, whatever. You want people to have fun in these worlds. You don't want to expose them to something terrible, and maybe you are. And as a player, you also don't want to be a disruptive person to others around you because one thing that could happen is you could end up being the problem. And, you know, it's basically, I would like to think most people, for the most part, are not there to make each other feel bad. Nobody wants to feel grumpy. Nobody wants to feel terrible when they go out and play their games together. Like, nobody wants to be upset. So if you can approach the affected party and like, hey, let's talk this out, because I find, at least in the personal stuff that I've observed, being a player talking player to player that tends, in my opinion, to work out a little bit better. Just because you can easily talk to them and say, hey man, we're not having the group cohesion we want right now. Can we work this out? Can we figure something to do? Like, it's just talking, right? Like, just be a friendo. Be a friendo to this person. Or if you've got a personal problem with them, say, hey, can we do anything to move past this? Is there anything that can be done? And I'm not saying you have to throw yourself on the sword. Like, they have to meet you halfway too. So it's all about learning to get the best compromise that works for everybody. And understanding you may not always get what you want. Hopefully you'll get what you need. If I think that's how the old song goes. But there is a flip side to this. Now, if you are the dungeon master or the storyteller or whoever, you can have toxic players. And you may observe people picking on another player or doing things that are disrupting group harmony. Like, for example, maybe somebody hogs a scene, maybe somebody throws a hand grenade or a thermal detonator into the middle of a crowd, or they're making inappropriate or racist jokes or something, right? Like, I'm just kind of spitballing ideas here. If you're the storyteller, game master, whatever, it is up to you to control that situation. It's up for you to figure out ways to wrangle that in while not disrupting player agency. But it's also being able to take so-and-so aside and say, hey, okay, something's happening here and I think it could potentially cause a problem. Now, what can we do to work through this? And that's where you, as a storyteller, really hold a lot of power, because you can be like, okay, maybe we can turn what's bothering you into something positive. Maybe there's a way to fix this. And that's very much the importance of session 0, is setting tone and parameters and really kind of getting a vibe. And I really feel after about like 3 or 4 sessions, you kind of get an idea on where everybody's coming from. Like, okay, that is Jill, and she likes to do X. That is Terry. They like to do X. This is Frankie and Michelle. They tend to gel this together. And you'll get an idea on how that table functions and what works. But sometimes Samantha comes in and fucks up the whole thing. And maybe Samantha's very new. Maybe they're overeager. But sometimes people are just trolls, right? Sometimes people are just there to fuck up your fun. And you'll recognize those guys pretty quickly. It doesn't always happen. Not always. I've seen it happen in like 3 games. And I've actually been that guy. So, true story. I was playing a game on a podcast. This would have been about 10 years ago. I was not having a good time. So me and another player said, hey man, let's throw a wrench into the works. We're still going to have fun. We're not going to totally, call in the proverbial SWAT team here, but let's be a little bit goofy. Now, the game itself was very goofy and over the top and very much depended on you doing things that would get you into trouble and get you killed, right? But we were those players, not exactly being cognizant of our GM's feelings. But the other time when we've bucked tradition as a player to a DM, it made the game really, really, really funny, and it made for a really entertaining piece of content. But not everybody rolls like that. I think it's very much like you can be funny, haha, but don't be funny. Ugh. You know what I mean? Like, don't grit your teeth to cause someone a headache. Because, like, when you're a dungeon master, when you're any type of storyteller, you want to engage your audiences, and that being your friends. Or, in my case, if you've ever been a podcast producer, you have to be willing to have those tough conversations. Like, hey, listen here, Johnny, could you not do 15-minute soliloquies? Or can you not split the party because then I have to run all these things, but it's what my character do. Yeah, I get that, but can we figure a way can we work together to make this happen? And again, that's you as the DM working cooperatively with your players to hopefully make this happen. However, not every story has a happy ending. Sometimes players are just disruptive. Sometimes players don't want to play well with others. And I've even seen people feel like they're taking things too personally, and that is a thing that does happen. And at that point, that's where I really feel empathy, and you really have to talk to these individuals as people. Be like, hey man, whoever, what's going on? What can we do to work this out? And how those conversations go can be 50-50. Sometimes people will be like, okay, cool, let's kind of do this. And other times those conflicts do not get resolved. So what do you do as a storyteller? What do you do when you're maybe engaging a friend or you're engaging a stranger? And this is where conversation does lead to confrontation. But again, you don't have to be a jerk about it. And this is something I've seen them do in the corporate world when it comes to human resources. I'm sure the bane of everybody. But it's called the exit conversation. And it's very much saying, hey, look, there are differences here that may not be overcome. And you as the storyteller can ask them to leave. And it's not a fun position to be in. I do not envy anybody who's ever done this. Because feelings inevitably get hurt. And usually justifiably so. But I find with the exit conversation, it's always important to stress the point. And if it's something that you want, like if you want to be friends, say like, hey man, I need you to step away from this. This is not personal. I want to still be friends. But for right now, I need you to take a timeout, or I need you to not engage with me in this space. And you, as a storyteller, have an absolute right to, you are supposed to enjoy what you're doing. I mean, if they're paying you, I guess there's a conversation there too, right? But sorry, I'm on about 3 hours of sleep. I'm tired. But it boils down to, like, don't make people feel bad, but let them know what they're doing is not cool. Like, you as a storyteller are just as entitled to having a good a time as anybody else too. And you as a player, your job is to be there, to have fun, to be present, but don't be a disruption. Like, the idea of storytelling and playing these role-playing games, whatever system they are, is we're all there to tell a story. But at the same time, we're also there to have fun. And you're there to make memories. You're there to bond. Like, I kind of see role-playing games as the ultimate icebreaker. It's a really good way to get to know somebody. It's a really good way to build friendships. And I am very fortunate that I've had a chance to play in a really long-running weekly game for quite some time with some really, really cool people. And there was a time where I thought it was going to implode, but it didn't, thankfully. And yeah, there's been some growing pains here and there, but the group has stuck together because we all just talked. And I'm glad that happens. But I've also been on the other side of the coin where I've seen groups just stop talking to each other. I've seen complete friendships just dissolve over fucking dice, and that sucks. It sucks to see it happen. Like, it feels like playground politics. And again, there could be some very, very real factors at play, and those do need to be considered. But at the end of the day, I guess my best advice for conflict resolution: be mindful, be in the moment, be willing to communicate in a non-hostile manner, listen to what everybody says. You have to put on the active listening thing. Like, one of the things we do in the indigenous teachings that I've been given is you're given the talking feather. And when you hold the talking feather, you can talk. When someone else holds it, you are in the moment listening. And that's actively engaging. And you may Like, don't just sit there and think about what you're going to say next. Sorry. Listen to them and see how you can respond, because you may think of something new if they say something like, oh, I never thought of it like that. Well, you're sitting there kind of stewing about something that was where we've had prep for like 20 minutes. Like, just ultimately, there is no easy way to solve conflicts. And if there was, well, I'm sure we'd have a lot less people shooting at each other. Let's be real about it. But I think there is a way forward. I do. But it's hard. I'm not going to lie to you about that. And feelings can and probably will get hurt. But I think the important thing is, don't go out there causing them. Don't be the reason someone is upset. Don't be the reason someone feels betrayed or feels upset by something you did. But also don't be the reason that someone feels like that either. Like, don't be that disruptive player. Talk with your friends. If your friends say, hey, that was really funny, but could you dial it back? You know what? Do that. And if it's going to affect your enjoyment of the game, maybe you need to take a step back and say, hey, maybe I'm the problem. And you know what? That's a good moment for personal growth too, is recognizing we are not perfect beings. We are not, we're not all the cast of Critical Role. We are unique individuals given life to this wonderful tapestry that is the role-playing game experience. Like I said, be it sci-fi, be it space fantasy, be it Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. You know, just create a fun experience for you and your friends. Create something memorable. Don't create headaches for people. So, like I said, be willing to be teachable. Be open to valid criticism. But listen to what's being said to you. But also don't take any shit out of there. If someone's being aggressive towards you and they're being mean about it, you'll know pretty quickly if you have that conversation and it's not reciprocated. But I am the eternal optimist. I like to believe in the best in people. I really do. And does that make me naive and stupid? Yeah, probably. But that's okay. I like to be that positive influence in a room. Have I been wrong? Yeah. And it sucks. It sucks to see when people can't just see past their differences to cooperate. But nobody should feel like they're a burden on another, and no one should feel traumatized when they play what should be a fun experience for them. So it's a lot of learning to be emotionally present, to be emotionally aware of yourself. And I know it sounds so dumb. We're talking about a game where we can stab a floating eyeball in the head with the knife of many stabs or whatever, or flying water moccasins or whatever. That's a pretty extreme example, granted, but you learn a lot about yourself playing these games. And I like to think through D&D, I have become a better conflict resolution person. I've become a better negotiator in many instances. I remember I had one person from a police service approach me last year. I was walking. I was driving down the street. I was playing Pokemon. But the person brought up the incident that happened in that room, and they said, "Hey, Mike, question for you. Have you ever taken any conflict resolution training?" I fought a dragon once. What? Like, yeah, I haven't done anything other than just, I play a lot of D&D and Mass Effect. I don't know. I punched a reporter in the face, and they're like, "You should really consider taking conflict resolution. You knew exactly how to take that room down." And I'm kind of hoping maybe you guys can apply some of that video game logic, right? Like, be Commander Shepard, right? Like, not everything has to be the Renegade option. Be Paragon when you can, right? But also realize that that's not always the option. I'm not saying you can always be Optimus Prime. Sometimes Megatron was right and had the right idea. Sometimes you want to be Professor X, but Magneto is making a pretty compelling argument here today. So, yeah, ultimately, I guess, final piece of advice, be teachable. Listen. Don't be a jerk. Don't be the reason someone feels like crap. Just try to be a good person as best you can. hopefully we'll still be rolling dice together for many years to come, and you will have that epic 20-year campaign that people only dream of, that people reach epic levels and it feels legit and earned. I hope you get that. I know I'm experiencing my longest running game ever, and I hope it continues to survive and thrive on to a long time. I really want to know what's past level 6. I've never seen it. It would be cool. So, anyway, guys, I'm not quite sure what's going to be coming up on Botched Roll. Like I said, if you want to keep an eye to my socials over the next little bit, you'll be able to find out what's going on with my role-playing game service. And then I'll probably be doing some stuff on Patreon that's a little bit more exclusive, like maybe some writing prompts, some NPCs for different games. Maybe just kind of hangouts. Maybe we'll do something on Twitch or like kind of Discord or something like that. And then I'll start offering services via that way as well. So hopefully you got something valuable out of this. I would be really curious to hear from you. So Mike at ThisWeekInGeek.net, or you can try getting a hold of me through my various other platforms. I'm always at Birdman.everywhere. I will have one set up for my DM service at some point, but I'm not quite ready to reveal that yet. So yeah, we're gonna keep workshopping that, keep rolling craft checks until I eventually get that critical success that I'm currently looking for. So anyway, guys, this has been Mike the Birdman saying, may all your rolls be with advantage, and may you always get that critical success you're looking for.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.